to this week's episode of Art Like Everything Else, the podcast where we use art to talk about literally everything else. I'm your host, Mo, and this week we're going to talk about yearning. So, we're still in the month of February, and I know yearning is something that a lot of people have, and it's definitely often related to love. And so, I wanted to talk about it for this month. So, with that being said, if you don't know what the word yearning means, I want to read you the definition so that we can kind of have an idea of how I want to have this conversation. So, the definition of yearning is to long persistently, wistfully, or sadly. So, I'm looking at the definition on Merriam Webster. And so, the second definition that I'm more so leaning towards is going to be to feel tenderness or compassion. And so, this kind of like having this strong desire for something to and showing this tenderness and compassion for it. So, with that being said, let's hop right into our first work of art. Alrighty, so for our first work of art, I'm going to be talking about a piece of art from the head yearner in charge, Hosier. I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Hosier, and I'm talking about yearning. He's probably one of the most known yearners, especially in his music. So I'm going to be talking about the song Francesca from his album Unreal Earth that released in 2023. Now, for those who don't know the song or who are haven't heard the song or listened to this artist in particular, I'm going to be honest and say that my interpretation of this song, and which is how I'm planning to talk about it, is not his intention for the song. It wasn't like the artist's intent. And so I do want you to have an idea of what he actually wanted for this piece because artist's intent is important, but also I do feel like how you feel, how the art that is created affects you, and how it lays down or makes space inside of you will be different, and sometimes it is different from the artist's intent, and in my case, it also was, and so I do wanna talk about his original intent, though, because it is really, really cool. So, this song actually was inspired by the, Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, and so this particular song is sort of loosely based on the story of Francesca de Rimini, and in that story, she has an affair with her brother-in-law, and so this is kind of like this loosely based sort of on this story, along with some like inspiration from Hosier himself. In this entire album, he has a lot of inspiration from Dante, and like the idea of like the different levels of hell and things like that. And so it's actually really, really cool. But again, that's his interpretation. My own interpretation is more so leaning towards the idea of like in our definition, which was sort of like this feeling tenderness and compassion and this just strong desire for something. And so my emphasis is definitely more so on the for something. Oftentimes when it comes to talking about yearning or desire, especially when it comes to Valentine's Day and the idea of love, it is often emphasized about a person, and so often this externalization of yearning is focused on someone else. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think it would be really cool if we could sort of expand that definition or expand the idea of yearning, not just for people, but also like experiences and moments in time. But some of my favorite lyrics in this song that sort of encapsulates this idea of like this strong desire or something, and like in the very first verse actually, it goes, "Do you think I'd give up? That this might have shook the love from me?" And with just those lines, those are at the very, very two first lines from the song. To me, it sort of speaks to this idea of people feeling like you can be made to give up on the things you desire or made to give up on the things you yearn for. And oftentimes, people want that to be the case. And so further into this verse, later in this verse, he said, "There's not one thing that I would change. My life was a storm since I was born. How could I fear any hurricane?" And so with those lines, he's sort of talking about and it's like references, at least for me, back to the "Do you think I'd give up?" He's sort of saying like, "I've lived such a hard life. Why would I be afraid of anything else sort of trying to get in my way of pursuing what it is that I desire, of pursuing what it is that I am yearning for? Why would I let anything get in the way of that?" And I think that's really powerful and really, really cool. And I love how it is sort of externalized in this particular way as like yearning as a means of a goal, essentially, where it's like I am using like this feeling of yearning to be like, I am not giving up. I want this thing so badly that I know that I am not going to give up. And then the second pre-chorus specifically says, "Though I know my heart would break, I tell them to put me back in it." And what I like about that particular line, because the chorus is essentially just "I would do it again." And in the second verse, he's talking about how everything's kind of gonna go to crap, essentially. And in it going to crap, he's like, that even if this is inevitable, I would do it again. And I think it's important that we find something or even someone, if your externalization of yearning has to be a person, then it is okay that for it to be a person. But to find someone or something or an experience that we would live our life all over for again. And this is just me just talking about how much I like this song because I really like this song. Like it's definitely part of why Hozier stays in my top 5 or shows up in my like Apple Wrapped every year. And it's a beautiful song because the post chorus, which is also really really good. He says, "I would still be surprised I could find you, darling, in any life. If I could hold you for a minute, I would do it again." And I think what my favorite part about that and how it relates to this conversation is that like finding these moments, even if it's really small, that is like I would live my life all over again just to experience this. And this is sort of related to this sort of concept that I've created for myself, but I'm going to talk about that concept a bit more in the actual conversation of this episode. So stay tuned for that. But right now, we're going to hop right over to our next work of art. Alrighty, so for our next work of art, I'm going to be talking about a short film that was written and directed by Blake Ritter, and it can be found on YouTube. Actually, it's called Self Love, and it was released in 2025, so last year. And it's less than 14 minutes. So the short film is less than 14 minutes. It's really good. It's really short, sweet, to the point. But I think it speaks so much to a part of this conversation that I want to have in regards to yearning. Because let me tell you about the movie a bit first, and then I'll explain a bit why it's related to the conversation before we jump into our conversation. And so the movie is called Self Love. Here's a brief description of it. If you like a little teaser before going and actually watching it, again, I recommend you watch it. And it goes, in a secluded cabin, a quiet retreat turns into an unexpected journey of reflection and revelation. Now, this is a really, really beautiful short film. There's only two people in it, the director himself who also he stars in it, and then there's another actress in the movie. And in this movie, so we have two characters. We have David and Anna. And so both of these characters are sort of they appear to be past lovers, and then we see Anna we see Anna sort of having to she's coming to terms with like her life not looking how she expected it to look. And then we sort of see David more or less almost chasing that familiarity of what their life together used to be or what it could have been. And I think it's really really interesting. So like because in I feel like in this particular movie we see yearning in with both characters just in different ways. And so this is me putting my thinking cap on, and because that's one of the most fun parts about experiencing and enjoying art. But I found really fascinating with this movie, even well, short film, was that like how we see David and we see him sort of reminiscing about what things looked like for them and why for Anna things didn't work out the way they were. Almost like he's yearning to maybe get back to a point where things worked for them. And then we see Anna sort of yearning for and desiring the space to just be and to exist and to almost like just let her brain breathe a little. Like she moved into a cabin out into the woods because she wanted to get away from what it was she was originally chasing when she realized that that kind of wasn't for her. And so we see David sort of coming and like talking to her and almost like wanting things to be back to the way they were while we also see Anna who's obviously wanting to get away from how things were. And I think that was really, really powerful because we got to see yearning in two different perspectives. And so often we see yearning externalized, which we see through David, but oftentimes yearning can also be internalized, which we saw through Anna, in which that like she yearned for the space to exist as she wanted to be, and not force herself to conform or force herself to exist in a way that she realized didn't actually work for her. And I think that's really important. And a part of showing that tenderness and that compassion that is often meant for other people or expected to be meant for other people or things outside of you. But she was showing that for herself. And we're going to talk a bit more about that in our conversation. So let's hop into our conversation. So, for today's conversation, like I said in the beginning, we're talking about yearning. And yearning not in just any particular way, but yearning as tenderness and compassion and just a strong desire for something. Now, so often we are very much used to the idea of yearning or the idea of to yearn in general is to something to be externalized. So it's for something else or for someone else, sort of like how we do see in Francesca by Hosier. He's yearning for a partner in that song, or in like how I sort of interpret it is like not just a partner, but like relationships in general. So like they can be platonic, familial, um, any of those, and also experiences. And then we often also see, sort of like with self love, a yearning turned inward. So this tenderness and compassion turned inward. And I think both sides are very, very important that like we sort of more or less create the that balance for ourselves where like we do desire and create a life where we yearn and we show tenderness and compassion for things outside of ourselves that would make us want to live and inspire us to live and keep living, or to want to live our life all over again, as well as showing that tenderness and compassion for ourselves. So, like showing up for ourselves and not just only allowing for the tenderness and compassion that we have and receive to be externalized and only go outwards. Because some of it honestly is necessary for yourself in order to keep going. I think that's really, really important. And something else that more or less sort of also inspired me to create this. So, like something I've done for myself, and honestly, I think I would recommend a lot of other people do. So, inspired by the song Francesca by Hosier, I have created for myself a Francesca list. And so, what goes on this list are people and experiences and just really cool things that inspire me and would make me want to live my life over again. That if I died today, despite all the hardship, despite all of the pain I may have suffered in my life, I would be willing to experience all of that again if it meant I got to meet these people again, if it meant I got to experience this very specific thing again, if it meant I got to love or experience or get to know like and see really really cool things in that particular way again. And I think that's really cool. And so I for me I've created this Francesca list to and be intentional about making moments and building relationships that fit that criteria. Like, would I be willing to live my life over again based off of this moment? Like, is this one of those moments that would inspire me to be like, you know what? I could go through everything again if it meant I got to experience this song for the first time again, if it meant I got to see and get to know like my nephews again, or if it meant I got to see and be the person that I am again. Because again, kind of like how I've been talking about, your yearning does not have to be externalized, it can be internalized. Like, I am one of the people on my own Francesca list. Like, getting to be the person that I am now, or that I was when I first created this list, I would like to live my life over to become that person again. Because I think it was a really cool experience. And I would like to do that again. And I've created, since creating this list, I have created moments and built relationships where I'm like, you know what? I would live my life over again if it meant I got to know these people, if it meant I got to experience this concert, if it meant I got to like see this really cool museum exhibit. Like, I would absolutely live my life over again for moments like that. And I think it's important that we're intentional about creating those moments. And I also think it's important that we are intentional about showing up for ourselves in creating these moments. So like that self-love in that self-love film, we see Anna showing up for herself, and we see Anna not putting David first, but she's also like not confining herself to only the way David is sort of expecting her to move. We see her acknowledging like whether or not she has time. We see her doing her own thing and choosing to enjoy and live her life how it is she wants to live it. And I think it's important that we show up for ourselves in that manner as well. And so yearning doesn't have to only be external. And like, I know I have talked about the idea of desire, and honestly, desire, that conversation could get a lot more political. I'm not going to do it in today's episode, but I do think one of these days I want to sort of more or less explore the political nature of desire and how that's often influenced, and how your idea of desire and what is desirable is cultivated based on the society you live in, because I do think that's an important conversation. Like, what you desire, what you see, you ascribe value to does not exist in a vacuum, because really nothing exists in a vacuum. Like, not even art exists in a vacuum, but that's an entirely different conversation. But yes, yearning in general to me is one of the most beautiful I- ideas and beautiful concepts to me for as a person and just in general for people, because I think it is so cool that we wanted or desired something so much that like this feeling was so distinct that it required its own word. I think that is something very powerful about being a person and about living the life that we do, that like people so many people experience this, that a word was necessary. And while I know that so often the idea of yearning is expressed or meant to be seen as something that's externalized, I did want a part of the conversation like I had today to definitely emphasize that your yearning can be internal too. You can yearn to see yourself a very specific way. You can yearn to build in you a type of peace that you desire and would like to be able to make or feel safe in your own personhood. And I think yearning and showing that tenderness and that compassion, that when we are externalizing that yearning, showing that for ourselves is going to be really, really important, because the world so often expects us to externalize compassion and externalize tenderness outside of ourselves, that we're not often told or encouraged to show up for ourselves. And the world is hard as it is, and as difficult as it is, I do think it is important that we show up for ourselves, and we're intentional about showing up for ourselves and showing compassion and this yearning and internalizing it. because when you do yearn for something, you do often want the best for it. You want the what's the word that I'm looking for? Not like aura, but you want the vitality. You want what's best for what it is you're yearning for. You are hoping for the best. You are yearning for this ideal. And you should want and create that ideal within yourself as well. And you should also create moments and experiences and build relationships, whether that's platonic, familial, communal, romantic, any of those. You should build relationships and have experiences that are also a lot like these moments that you would in make you enjoy so much that if push came to shove, say we're in a Groundhog Day moment, if you had to live your entire life over again just to have those moments, that it would be worth it. I think it is very cool. And honestly, my whole point at this point is to I'm being intentional about creating moments and experiences that would make me want to live again. Because that's life. That's the beauty of being a person. And that's the beauty of living this life on this rock in space and wanting to not feel like terrible for doing so. And that's okay. I think being and yearning and desiring too can be an art. In art like everything else. Last and certainly not least is this week's awe moment. So for this week's awe moment, I'm going to be talking about the movie The Bucket List. It was released in 2007. It starred Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman, and essentially the movie is two terminally ill men. They are dying from cancer, and they decide to go on a road trip with a wish list of things they want to do before they die. Now, I want to talk about this particular movie just because it is sort of related to the topic at hand for this week. So I feel like it's loosely related to my idea of a Francesca list. So while my Francesca list isn't necessarily about doing things before you die, because the whole idea is that like it's about doing these things that would you would you would be willing to live your life again for. And that's not the case here. But I also do have my own idea of a bucket list. I call it the big list just because I don't really care for the term kick the bucket. And so for me, big list is just before I go. And so like the before I go list and the big list are the same. On my before I go list are things I want to do before I go, are things that I think would be really, really cool to do and to experience before I left this iteration of my life. So like things that I personally want to do that are on my big list would be like visiting as many dark sky parks as possible. And so like even if I can't visit all of them, I think it'd be really cool if I could visit like one on each continent. And so that's something that's on my list. Something else that's on my list. There's this jacket I want to make. I have the entire concept for a jacket that I will probably post on my own personal page once I get around to actually doing it. So follow me there. But yeah, the idea of creating a life or finding these things that you do want to do before you go, I think can coincide with what I have sort of going for myself with this Francesca list. Because while they don't necessarily go hand in not I would say they're more of a Venn diagram. So it's like while my Francesca list are the things and moments and people that I've met and experienced that would inspire me to live my life over. Some of those moments might not necessarily be on my big list, just as like some of the things on my big list might not be on those moments, but there is gonna be some overlap. And so I think it'd be really cool to see that overlap. So maybe in your own free time, create these lists for yourself. Like what are some things that you've experienced in your life that would inspire you to live your life over again? And also, what are some things you would just love to do before you left, before things hit the fan for you for real? I think it's cool to see where we are mentally and what sort of things inspire us to keep going and are part of what is keeping us going. So yeah, that's all I have for you today. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. The Lovely Infinite, lovely LVLY. So it's lovely without the vowels, and then infinite INFINITE. That's on the screen. And then also follow this page. So Art Like Studios on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Art Like Studios. And if you'd like to follow the podcast on YouTube, feel free to do that. Also, feel free to follow us on Apple Podcasts as well as Spotify. Listen, wherever you listen to podcasts, find us there. And also, I do have another page. I have created another page, and I wanted this to be the more communal aspect of my goal or mission or everything really for Art Like Studios, it's an art collective that I created called the CMP Collective. So CMP stands for both creative maintenance and preservation, as well as coolest motherfuckers on the planet, inspired by the song Outkast, So Fresh and So Clean. And so I wanted to create a Discord for this particular art collective so that like we can create and do things as like if not as a group, just like simultaneously, almost like as like a body doubling type of thing, because I thought that'd be really cool. And like having a way for people to learn and engage and experience and get to know how to understand art. But then all that stuff with Discord happened, and that's so annoying. So I am currently looking into how to build my own website and how to host or do all this techie stuff. And I'm not very techie, so it's taking some time. But I think it's cool if you would like to follow my CMP Collective pages right now. TikTok and It's on TikTok and Instagram. And so right now I'm more so focusing on artworthy revisits. So I'm sharing works of art that I think are worth revisiting or even just witnessing if you haven't witnessed this yet. So it's Black History Month. So right now I'm highlighting a lot of Black artists, and I intend to sort of and highlight a lot of really dope art and artists through that measure. I'm also getting ready to start releasing some how to understand videos. And also I'm want to do more interviews so that we can talk to artists directly. And so feel free to follow those pages if you'd like to be a part of that. And you'll also be the first to know when the actual communal aspect of the CMP collective occurs, because I do very much want there to be a place for people who are interested in learning about art and being educated, and creators themselves to kind of find a way to get directly in communication with people who enjoy art the way that they do. And I think that'd be really, really cool. And yeah, so that's all I have for you today. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.